Welcome to everyone that has joined our Ignite session on stress management. And this is a short webinar, so it's just a bit of a taster of what we have available in stress management. So I'll kind of be going through some of the key terms. What is stress? We'll also be looking a little bit about the causes and the effects of stress. And then more importantly, giving you a few key tools that will help you to manage your stress moving forwards. It's not going to cover everything, of course. You might have your own individual ways of kind of dealing with your own stress, but I want to make sure that we all get something out of today. So over the next 30 minutes or so, I'll be going through some of the content which we have. Within it will be some interaction. So I will be asking you to use the poll everywhere on your phones, or if you've uploaded it onto your laptop, computer, whatever, please participate as and when those pop up. I'll give you a bit of instructions about what's required. We have a number of functions that you might see available on Zoom today. I'm not going to be utilizing a lot of them. We will be breaking you out into a number of groups partway through the session so that you can have your own discussions. So don't think that it's going to be me talking all the time. We are going to get you guys involved, but we'll split you up into smaller groups to be able to do that. You will see some buttons across the bottom of your participants tab. Primarily yes, no, go slower, faster, you want to go for a break. Again, because we're on a short session, I'm not necessarily going to be paying attention to too many of those functions, but my co-host Russell, who is kind of there waving now, he will be managing the chat function. So if you do have any questions throughout the content, please do put them on the chat function and we'll address those towards the end of the session. All right, so it's lovely seeing all your faces. I'm going to now share my screen so that you can see the presentation, and that way we can definitely move forward. Excellent. So once again, this is the poll everywhere. It's our stress management webinar. The QR code will continuously appear, hopefully, if it does come through, so that you can keep clicking that or just go back to your phone, the other web browser that you've opened to answer these. You will have seen this scrolling through, but if you've recently just joined, if you do need to speak, hold the space bar and that will temporarily unmute you. This will be more important when you're in breakout rooms. We'll use all questions towards the end of the session, so please do use that chat function. Engage in those polls, and yeah, keep the videos on, because especially when you go into the breakout rooms, it's nice to see those different people, and it does create that kind of social engagement. I'm sure we're all familiar at the moment with this social distancing. Some people are starting to change that to physical distancing, because we don't really want to socially distance ourselves. We want to come together in these difficult times. So it's really important for you to kind of still create those connections, and it aids us in our kind of difficulty and maybe our stress as well. So I just want to go back to our word cloud here. So this is what people were adding into the very first poll I added. So what have you been grateful for this week? So some of these do break up. So if you've used a number of words, they may not have all gone together, but we've got family, maybe having time to myself, or not, if you've got the kids at home, maybe. Participating in some webinars, which is great. Being a little bit healthier, being kind, which is lovely. That's a great thing. We'll be touching on that later with regards to how we can help with our own stress. Watching series, doing yoga, I think trying to make sense of these, being more innovative. So, all right, great. So we've got some excellent things that are going on, whether we've been at home for more than a week, 2 weeks already, or whether we're just starting this week. It's nice to see those things. And I wanted to start with that because even though we're talking about stress management today, what's really important is taking time to think about what you've been grateful for. Because if we just focus on some of those negative things, it just drives us further into stress. So make sure that you do focus on those positives, because it is a good way to kind of lift us out of that. Okay, so I'm going to get us started now. And firstly, I just want to talk about well-being and mental health. And the reason for this is because stress is kind of utilized so much in the world of work and outside of work, in this kind of world that we're in now. You know, people refer to it as a VUCA environment. And what I want to make clear is stress is something that we all experience. Okay, so don't think that, oh, I'm feeling really stressed. Well, do you know what? Sometimes you should be, because it's the body's kind of natural way of working. So if I just break down well-being and mental health, we've got two different elements here. So well-being is an accumulation of three pillars. Okay, so we're talking about the physical, the social, and the mental state that people are in. So well-being encompasses all of those elements. And what's really important with stress is that they kind of are driven by all three of those pillars. You can experience stress because you're impacted physically, you can experience stress because your lack of social engagement, and you can also experience stress mentally as well. So it's really important that we are aware that well-being is a kind of all-encompassing element. Mental health itself is something that we all have. So again, we see the word mental health and we think of the conditions that go alongside of that, but mental health is not that. Mental health is just like physical health. We all have physical health, and when that's impacted, then we have a lack of physical health. So we might be injured. Mental health is us being resilient, okay? So being able to survive through difficult situations, and understanding and connecting with others, okay? When that is impacted, our mental health can decrease just like our physical health. So we might get a mental health injury. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about here, because stress is just us being temporarily injured in our mental health. Stress isn't a mental health condition, okay? So it's not something that's constantly going to impact someone's mental health. When it gets so serious, that's when we start to talk about anxiety. And again, anxiety is something that we all experience, but if it's constant and prolongs over a 2-week period and has a major impact on our day-to-day life, that's when it becomes a mental health condition or a mental health illness, okay? So just be aware when someone talks about mental health, think about the positive elements. How's your mental health today? How's your physical health today? We're trying to ask how well they are. So just a nice little way to get us started of those two key definitions. Now, moving into stress, okay, well, we've got two different definitions here. And the reason why I've done this is because most of us are probably just talking about stress generally, and that's what's in the yellow box, okay? So a state of emotional strain or tension resulting in adverse or demanding circumstances, okay? So that's kind of the key definition of stress. The one on the right in the blue box is actually the definition of workplace stress, and that's the definition by the Health and Safety Executives Standards, which is based in the UK. So it's the adverse reaction people have to excessive pressures or other types of demand placed on them in work. Okay, so there are two little definitions there. And the reason why I've given you that is because think about where that stress is coming from. Is it something that is coming more from the workplace and those demands being placed on you, or is it something that is just a more general stress and having emotional strain? Of course, workplace stress can go into general stress, but again, I just wanted to kind of iron each of those out for you so that you're aware that there is differences between the two. So let's go a little bit deeper into what is stress so that we can understand it a little bit deeper. So these are the four key things about stress. Stress is about us reacting to the demands of life. So yes, we all experience it. It is very common, and more importantly, it is natural, okay? We always hear, if you've watched any other videos or you've been engaged in any other kind of stress management training, they always refer to, you know, back when we were cavemen or anything like that, cave women, we had that natural response to stress, fight or flight, sometimes also freeze. But be aware that it is a natural response. Our bodies try to prepare ourselves for what we're experiencing of that demand of life. So maybe it is getting our adrenaline pumping so our muscles have more blood so that we're ready to run away or fight. It might be that it drains the blood from less serious organs that need to be used in that time. So when we have butterflies in the stomach, that is essentially our digestive system being drained of blood. So that's why it kind of gets that weird feeling going across your stomach. And that's exactly what it is. So one of the key things about stress is to understand it is natural, okay? It's the body's way of protecting us, okay? Making sure that we can run away, fight for what we need to survive. Also, be aware that not all stress is negative. I'm going to take you through a couple of key terms after this, where we will see that there are positive elements to stress. We usually call that eustress, for like euphoric stress, and it's things that help us get through the day. So those difficult deadlines that you might be facing, or the fact that you've got to think about how can you run out now and get some key groceries, knowing that there's a bit of a lockdown going on and not only going out for essentials. You might go through a little bit of stress there. What if someone calls me out for being out, things like that. So that's more normal stress, and it helps us get through those moments. So there's some of the key elements about what stress is. To understand it a little bit more, we want to look at the causes, okay? So I've just opened another poll now, and I want you to just get back to your phones or your other tabs. And I just want you to tell me what is currently causing you stress. Okay, so maybe let's think about the last week or so. What has recently caused you stress? Okay, so great, we've got uncertainty popping up there. Just wait for a few more of these to come through. Closed borders, yeah, definitely. So, you know, are we able to get out and get to our home country, or maybe you're still wanting to this to blow over a little bit so that you can get on that holiday that you have booked. A lot coming through now. So, yeah, potential redundancies. That's a big issue for some people. Freedom, yeah. So actually being confined now. That is certainly something that's having an impact on people. What else have we got? I think one might be fear for the elderly or something like that, because again, if there's put number of words on the thing, they separate into the word cloud. So yeah, worried about the elderly who are more prone to having more negative effect of the virus currently going around. So we can see this just getting bigger and bigger. The bigger those words, the more people that have put them. So again, you can see some of those key ones: deadlines, challenges, family, work. So again, all those key things. So if we have a look at all of these, we will actually find that they fall into a number of categories, mainly 5 different categories. So I'm just going to show you what these 5 categories are and give a brief overview of them. Okay, so these key causes. Firstly is home life. So we've already seen a few elements within that word cloud, you know, family, worried about the elderly. Well, you know, most of us have a great home life, or what we hope to be a great home life. And there are certain things, pressures that are put on that. And that's usually by our spouses, our parents, siblings, children. But that can also be some of our friendships. So the demands of those people that are external to us are what can sometimes cause us stress. So again, going back to the fear of our family, or worried about our family, they can be some key concerns, and that will drive stress. But on the flip side of that, it can also be an internal stress of home life, where you feel that you've got to provide for your family. So that could be an additional stress. It could be that you're feeling you're not spending enough time with your family. So again, that can be an internal stress that you put on yourself rather than an external one. So home life is one of our key elements. Changes in your life circumstances is another key reason for stress. And this is sometimes where we see some of the eustress or euphoric stress, so the good things that happen. So we might think that marriage, pregnancy are good things that might happen in our life, but that doesn't mean it doesn't come with some form of stress, because our responsibilities might change. So we might have thought, well, do you know what? I've usually been on my own, or it's just been me and my partner, and then now that we're going to have a child come along, or we're going to commit on a more serious basis, your responsibilities are going to change. So you might have some stress that comes with that. It might be planning the wedding or prepping, things like that. But we also have unexpected elements of life. So it might be a divorce, death, those things can also cause us stress, dealing with the fallout of those issues that we might experience. So again, each of those may cause stress within us. Moving on to the third one is money, okay? Money, we saw an element there where people mentioned about redundancy, so not also being about work, but also being about money. Financial worries are generally seen as the number one stress that people experience across the globe. So when I've looked at surveys from the UK, from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US, because they're the kind of places that tend to do these large-scale surveys, financial worries is always top of the list of the most number one stress that people have. So yeah, and it's very easy to see why that is. We want to live a better life. We want to make sure that we provide for our family. We might be sending money back home to some of our family. And so managing that, juggling that, brings its own stresses. And that's certainly something that we all are familiar with. So money being number one. Money is usually closely followed by the next one, which we've touched on with our definition at the beginning, work stress. Okay, so those demands that are placed on us by our workplace, and it's usually the second in that kind of survey. So starting with finance, then workplace. So yeah, things become stressful because we might be overworked, we might have more required of us than we originally anticipated. So again, it's that lack of preparation that those things are going to come towards us. It can also be boredom in the workplace. Some people might be feeling that they're not getting enough out of their work, and that can be quite stressful and frustrating. So some of us might be looking back and go, I'd love to have that. I'd love to be a little bit bored in work rather than being run off my feet constantly. But think about those times when you may have been ill or had time off work for a prolonged period. It's very easy for us to kind of get a little bit agitated and want to get back into some form of work. So not being worked enough is also something that drives some stress. And demanding bosses also tops those key lists of bosses wanting us to do more than what is expected of us, or potentially expecting more of us than we can actually provide. So they bring their own stresses as well. The final one is illness. So yes, of course, if we are physically ill, this often brings about stress, mainly because when we are impeded by a physical illness, we're unable to do things day to day that we would normally do. And that in itself can bring about key stress for us. Funnily enough, being stressed can also create physical illnesses in us as well. So stress and prolonged stress has also been linked to heart disease as well. So again, it's very important for us to consider the impacts of stress, the causes of stress, what is causing those, and how can we deal with them more effectively. So be aware that stress is something that can impact both physical as well as mental health. So they're the five key reasons what causes stress. And what I kind of like us to do now is think about the effects of stress. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 4 key areas in which stress is presented. But I'm going to now ask Russell to look to break you off into some breakout rooms where you can talk about these 4 key areas. So just so you know what these 4 key areas are, we're going to talk about emotional. So how does stress present itself emotionally to people? So what emotions are commonly shown? Could be anger, for example, within that. What behaviors do people present when they're under stress? So if we link that to anger, it could be that someone's quite snappy when we are speaking to them. I want you to think about mentally what that has an effect on people. So maybe it jumbles our thoughts. We can't make decisions very well. And then physically, what impacts does stress have on us physically? So our heart might beat more. We might get flushed cheeks. We might sweat. So there's some examples of what the effects of stress are. So Russell's going to break you out into a number of breakout rooms now. There'll probably be around 5 or 6 of you in each room. Because we are short on time, being just a taster, I don't want you to spend too much time introducing yourselves, but do give each other a wave on your webcam, and then just dive straight into some of those conversations. What I am going to do when you go into your breakout room is show the next slide, which is just this, but on your poll everywhere. So do look at your poll everywhere, and these 4 things will be on just to prompt you to have those responses with one another. So if I could just ask you, Russell, if you wouldn't mind breaking people out. You may get a little pop-up to say join breakout room. Please do that. I will be giving you around 5 minutes just to go through this discussion. In fact, I'll probably make that 4 just to kind of cut time down a little. So maybe 1 minute on each topic. And then I'll give you 60 seconds to get back into the main room. Okay? So Russell,
perfect.
If you don't mind.
I will do. So one thing, you'll get a 60-second timer. You can keep talking till the end of that 60 seconds, and it'll automatically bring you back in. All right. We'll dip into a couple of the rooms as well. See you soon.
Just to get you started then, what kind of effects do you think stress has on us in those 4 key areas? So emotionally, behaviorally, mentally, and physically.
Physically, I think it's fatigue.
Yeah, definitely fatigue. Yeah.
This is on when it comes to maybe overthinking when it comes to mental.
Yeah, definitely overthinking is a great one. Brilliant. Okay, well, I'm just going to pop in and out of some of the other rooms just while we're going on. So please do talk amongst yourselves about what else you think is going to impact you. And then we'll get you back into the main room shortly.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Hi, Michael.
And that's not very fulfilling. And when we say emotional, yes, of course, because you're not being, I think the current corporate work environment kind of, or certain work environment kind of expect us to behave like emotionless robots, that we're not human beings anymore, kind of expect to be very, very robotic and just get the work done and don't care about anything. So that does drain us emotionally on a daily basis. It does affect the other areas of our life. And then coming to physically, of course, no doubt it will show effects on
moving to a different direction altogether, and not thinking about the problem anymore, and going through some music or learning a new language altogether, which is a different flavor for me, but it is helping me to relieve my stress.
Okay, it's great for you to share how you cope with this, but any physical effects?
Yeah, I start facing some pains actually in the back pain and sort of thing when I'm very much stressed, and this is already an indication that I need to stop thinking. So it's mostly the posture and my body gives me indications that.
Yeah.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, how are you doing?
We are good.
Okay.
Good.
Sharing.
Conversation's going well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, as soon as it seems to be going well, I'll just pop in and see another room before we look to bring everyone back.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Behavior, I think these two are some things which we can connect it together, as one of you mentioned, where people need to be self-aware, being more emotionally intelligent. So that's something what I would connect here with. People are less emotionally intelligent when you're stressed, and because probably you're focusing more on the emotions, and that results in different behaviors.
Great stuff, guys.
Yeah,
Seems like some good stuff is going on. Just to let you know, there'll probably be a 60-second countdown shortly, but you can still carry on until everyone's brought back into the main room. But good going, keep your conversations going. Excellent. All right, so thank you very much for everyone contributing there. I did manage to dip in about 4 or 5 of the breakout rooms there within those 4 minutes that we had. So I hope you had some fruitful discussions. What I'm just going to do now is kind of walk you through a couple of the key areas of each of these 4 areas that affect us during stress, and we'll start with emotionally. Okay, so I heard a few of these come out in some of the sessions that I was in, but some of the common things that do present themselves are irritability, impatience, anger, self-doubt, so not being sure of yourself. Panic is something that often is present when people experience a lot of stress. So that's where it does kind of start to teeter into a potential mental health condition, because we could develop panic disorders. And that's if we have experienced stress on a number of occasions within a certain issue or a certain area. So maybe going out to social gatherings or something like that. If we've experienced panic before, it's likely to bring on another panic, because we are expecting ourselves to feel exactly the same way we did the last time we experienced it. So again, that draws the body into doing those typical elements of the other 3 or 4 of these elements. So emotional withdrawal is probably one of the last ones, because again, we might not really want to connect with people due to being stressed. If we move to behavior, then we become less sociable often when we are stressed, because we go a bit more internal and only focus on ourselves and how we can deal with this situation, so we don't necessarily interact with others. Potentially less caring and also more hostile to others as well. We become less tolerant about other people's perceptions and how they perceive things, and we might even provoke arguments on the back of that. We could stress eat, so because we're under stress, we might turn to food. Some people may turn to other elements, so sometimes we smoke more. So all different elements can come into place there where we might start stress eating or anything else. What also might be presented behaviorally is when we're under stress, we may take part in more risk-taking behavior. So we might do things that we wouldn't normally do because we feel like it might bring about a different response to what we've normally done. So again, people become more risky as part of stress. Oops, sorry, I think I've just clicked off something. There we go. So mentally, I did mention this before, you know, jumbled thoughts. I heard someone in one of the breakout rooms saying that people could become more confused about things. So that's a great reason why stress might impact us. We could become more worry focused. So again, if we experience stress on a regular basis, we always think about what could potentially be the worst. And you can see that fearing the worst is also another key effect there. So having negative thoughts, being more problem focused rather than solution focused are all key elements of how we can be affected mentally by stress. Lastly, physically, these are all the things that are common to us. We've probably all experienced these, going to an interview, having a meeting with the boss, maybe about a salary increase, or we don't know what that conversation is going to be about. So we could have our heart pump faster, our breathing could become more shallow, we could become dizzy, potentially, a dry mouth, those butterflies that I talked about earlier, and then potentially sweating as well. So sweaty palms, sweaty back, face, anything like that. So all those things are effects of stress. Now, the reason why I focus on this is because some of you may be looking at this and going, oh yeah, I know what the effects are. But what we don't do is we don't pay attention to them. So we don't become aware that when these things are present, we are now going through stress. And like I mentioned before, it's a natural response. It's natural for the body to put us into these situations. Any of these 4 effects or a mixture of them. So one of the things that is key to managing your stress is being aware when you are stressed. Because what that allows us to do is take a step back and go, hold on a moment. I'm now experiencing my sweaty palms. I'm starting to feel like I'm a bit argumentative towards people. I can't really focus my thoughts. I need to take a step back. So being aware of these effects is one way for us to help deal with stress and manage it. And it's allowing us to take a step back, reassess the situation that we're in, and just step away from the general stress. Be aware that these things happen. It's natural. Let me try and think a different thought process. So that is one of the key ways in which we can deal with stress. So what I'm going to walk you through now is some of the key ways in which we can tackle stress. So there's a few points here that have come up. So apologies, I've not clicked my animation on this, so don't worry too much about it. The first thing we're going to look at is the mood scale. Okay, so the mood scale is something that we can use to track on a hourly, daily, weekly basis on how we're feeling in terms of our mood. And it goes from a scale of -5 to 5, going from a negative mood through to neutral to a positive mood. And just by allowing us to track that, again, it just puts us in that state where we're being more attentive towards what our mood is. And by being aware of that, we can now make changes. So if you find yourself in the -4, -3, great, okay, we can do something about that. Let's try and put some steps into place to try and move us up that scale. What's important to be aware of with the mood scale is we're not going to be able to jump from -4, -3 all the way up to 3, 4, 5 in positive. It's about incremental changes. Okay, so doing something slightly different to move us up that scale 2, 3 points, and then do something else. So keep reassessing, is this improving my mood? Because you might do something and go, oh, this is definitely going to improve my mood, but then actually it doesn't. And you find yourself even further down the scale because you're now frustrated that what you thought would do it. So always try and think about small incremental gains. What can I do a little bit different that might help me move up this scale? Reassess, then move up the scale again. So I'm going to ask you guys to put yourselves on the mood scale shortly. It is anonymous. It doesn't come up who said what, so don't worry too much about that, but I'd like to ask you that question shortly. The other two that I'd like to make you aware of is the Penn State Worry Questionnaire. You can find this online. It's 16 questions, and again, you go for each question, circling the answer that you feel is most relevant to you at this period of time, and then it gets you to calculate them. So some of them are kind of reverse numbers, so you might get 0, 1, 2, 3 for one element, but then when you answer another question, it's 3, 2, 1, 0. So it does take a bit of maths to add up your scores, but again, you can see what your worry scale is like. The bottom one there is the perceived stress scale. Again, you can find this online, and it comes in a 10 or 4 question pose. And again, so if you just want to do it quickly, use the 4 question. If you want to do it more in depth, use the 10. And again, you can just see where you are on this scale, and the sites that you go on will tell you what those difference in scales are. So what your scoring is, if it's less than 8, up to 11, etc., etc. So do take a look at those online. But what I'd like you to do is return back to your poll everywhere, and just put a marker on one of the numbers. So from negative mood -5 up to positive mood 5, and just click on one of the numbers, and that will tell me how many people are in certain moods. So hopefully this seminar isn't affecting this mood, or if it is positively, that's a good thing. But we can see quite a few people just above neutral there. We've got one person just below neutral, so potentially not in a good mood so far, but we've got quite a number of 1s and 2s there, starting to jump up a little bit. A few people on the 4, so great to see that you're in a positive mood there. It's nice to see that. So yeah, we've got quite a few people kind of putting their own thoughts in there. So this is something that you can utilize to just try and see, where is my mood? Do I need to do something differently due to that? Okay, so don't worry if you haven't clicked on this yet. I'm just going to move on to tell you a few more tools that you can use. The next tool that I'm going to say is more to do with anxiety. So when stress becomes more serious and we're experiencing anxious elements, which do show some of the similar symptoms, you could do this next questionnaire, which is the GAD-7 questionnaire. So again, this is something where you can assign yourself a number based on how often you have been bothered by the following problems over the last 2 weeks. So you'll see that there are 7 different questions there: feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge. And then you state whether you have felt that in the last 2 weeks. Not at all. Several days over the last 2 weeks, more than half of the days in the last 2 weeks, or nearly every day in the last 2 weeks. And again, you'd add up those totals and put your score in the bottom. Generally, if you score more than 8, then that is something to say that you are particularly anxious. It's not that you have a condition, so this doesn't diagnose you in any stretch of the imagination. It's just a way for us to see how anxious we might be feeling. So 8 is generally that we are feeling anxious and we might need to take some steps. Anything over 11 is where we say it might be best for you to seek some professional help. So just go and speak to a doctor, speak to a professional just about how you could manage your anxiety a bit more effectively. Anything, I think it's above 17, is where we could seriously have an issue and we need to get some support as quick as we can. So the GAD-7 questionnaire is used by doctors all over the globe. And again, it's something that you can find online. So do pay attention to that one. We are going to give a handout at the end of the session, so it will have some of these key tools on. So basic principles about stress on one side, and it'll have a few of the key tools on the back so that you can utilize those. So then it comes to analyzing your stress. So here's a graph just to show you your stress score on the left and then the time. So whether you've chosen hours, days, or weeks, it's up to you. But you can see this is a 2020 chart. And you might track your mood or stress over a week. So on the first day, we might have a score of 4, but then it might jump up to a 13, maybe down to a 3, 4, 9, and then kind of dropping again. So you can track your stress over a period of time. And again, this just gives you a nice, easy way to see where you need to pay attention. So here, what was going on in this day when you had a 13 stress rating? What happened on that day? How can you avoid that from happening again? Where was your lowest score? What happened on this day? How can you replicate doing this? And things like that. So they're 2 key areas where you can focus on by analyzing your stress over a period of time. So one of the last key questions, because I'm aware I'm kind of going a little bit over time here, but what do you do to de-stress? And then I'll quickly talk about some of the key areas in which stress can be counteracted. So yeah, great. Meditate, great way to de-stress. It's one of the 2 key ways to eliminate stress. So sleeping and meditating are the 2 key ways in which we can completely de-stress. Anything else is just a way to kind of reduce stress. So smoking, I wouldn't recommend. We'll go on to that later about the 6 key principles of de-stressing. But working out is definitely a good one. Exercise, yoga, reading, taking time for yourself. All of these things that are starting to come out of this are exactly what we're going to talk about just over the next minute or so to outline the last ones. So great, we've got sports coming through, writing a list, great way to manage what's going on. Organization is a great way to kind of counteract your stress, so putting things in a logical order. So just to move on quickly, so don't worry if yours didn't pop up. Here are some of the key steps to manage stress just to kind of finish our seminar off. So firstly, identify the causes. Use some of the tools that I've already talked about in today's session and try and work out what happened at that time when you were stressed. How can you potentially avoid those situations, or what barriers, what steps can you take to ensure that that doesn't happen again? So again, bringing order to your life. A to-do list is a great way to manage that, which was mentioned before on how someone de-stresses. You can also do that by keeping a stress log. So again, triggers, thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, so the physical element, behaviors, and then you can also assign a stress severity. So how stressed do you think you were on a scale of 1 to 100? The purpose of doing this is because over time you might find that if you experience the same issue, same trigger, you might not feel as stressed with it the next time because you've built some resilience already. So in the interest of time, I did have a little example to go through here, but I'm just going to whiz through this. The slide will be available afterwards so you can have a look at it. The next one is assessing your work-life balance. Extremely important. We often dedicate far too much of our time to work and don't do things that are important to us or to our family. So make sure that you set aside some time to spend with others. So if it's your family, yeah, dedicate some time to do that. With the situation that we're in at the moment, video call them, even WhatsApp as a last-ditch effort to connect with others to create a bit of life balance, okay? So make sure that you use that, and most importantly, take time for yourself. So those people who said meditate, things like that, yeah, good to kind of utilize your own time. Reading, a nice one as well. Exercise regularly. So yeah, I kind of used a nice infographic there. Looks like that's all we might be able to do at the moment with restrictions of going outside. So simply dancing around your biggest room might be the best way for you to get some exercise. But anyone that turns to me and says, do you know what, I can't really exercise that much at the moment because of the restrictions, just remember that Italian guy that ran a marathon on his 7-foot balcony. So he just kept running side to side and ran the length of a marathon. So if he can do that, I'm sure you can use some steps in your property to just do a few step ups, just doing a few star jumps. Get onto YouTube and look at some yoga videos or some little fit videos. You can do all sorts in your house. So don't feel like you can't regulate exercise. At a minimum, 30 minutes brisk walk. So yeah, we can still get out and walk a little bit. So again, just keep your distance between people. Make some lifestyle changes. So someone mentioned before about smoking for stress. I am saying here, avoid cats. So yeah, not the cats that we might see roaming about the streets, but this is caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, and sugars. Okay, so try and restrict the intake of those. All of those contribute and replicate the feelings of stress within our bodies. So using caffeine, for example, no more than 400 milligrams per day. And to put that into perspective, a filter coffee usually has about 120 milligrams. A cup of tea is usually around 80. So once you've had 4 of those, you've pretty much got your caffeine for the day. So anything over that can have a huge impact. So be aware of those. Set some goals for yourself with your lifestyle changes. And again, think about your relationships. I heard some people talk in the breakout rooms about learning new skills now. So trying to learn a language or an instrument, taking courses that they haven't done before. So that's a great way to keep yourself, your mind active using education and maybe furthering your career. Do some things of interest to you. So my wife has started baking a little bit, something that she thought she'd never really do, never really liked the idea of it, but now she's kind of enjoying that time while she's in. So yeah, do those little things that might generate some interest for you, even catching up on your TV programs that you might have missed, the latest film that's out. And be aware of your mind, body, and spirit. Those 5 elements there at the bottom of the screen are all the 5 key areas of well-being. Okay, so being mindful, so taking time to just think about the situation that you're in. So don't get that mixed up with mindfulness. Mindfulness is a technique to help us become more mindful, but it's just about thinking about the moment, okay? And you know what's happening right now. Try not to think about the past or the future, just what's happening right now. Be active, which we've talked about already. Giving to others. So, you know, we might have a lot of people here at the moment that are struggling. So how can you potentially give to them without putting yourself in any further danger or kind of an issue at the moment? So just keep that kind of mindset of keeping your distance, but again, how can you support and give to others? Connect with others. Again, I mentioned that before. It's really important to connect. Make sure that you've got your WhatsApp to text people, that you've got a facility like Zoom so that you can contact people online, face-to-face. It's really important for us to connect. And then going back to that education and career, it's all about learning as well. They're all things that keep us engaged, motivated, and kind of alleviate from some of that stress. This is a really good picture that Russell once showed to me about being mindful. So is your mind full of everything that's going on in your life at the moment? And compare that when you're taking a dog for a walk, maybe, who's probably just thinking about what's right in front of them right now. So again, get yourself in the moment. I quite like this as a visual. Get enough sleep. 6 to 8 hours is recommended. Rest is also important, so make sure that you take time for yourself, especially now where we're constantly looking at our laptops, etc. 10 minutes every hour is really important for you to get away from that screen, because even eye strain can generate some of those elements of stress. So yeah, try and take 10 minutes away, have a little potter around your room just to kind of get up and do a bit of exercise as well. But just get away, get yourself a drink of water to kind of keep your body refreshed, but do get away from that screen at least 10 minutes every hour. And then lastly, know your limits. As much as we might want to be, you're not Superman, you're not Superwoman, you are a human. These things impact us, okay? We know that they exist, we know that stress exists. Let's pay more attention to it when it happens, to try and step back and put into effect some of these ways to manage stress. So maybe tracking it, understanding what is causing us stress and what we can do, and make some of these key changes, okay? So just want to kind of open that out now. I'm showing a presentation feedback on your poll everywhere, so you can do that. But just to check in with Russell, was there any key questions, Russell? I know that we're over time now.
Yeah, that's fine. I've got 4 really. So quick ones. At the beginning, you talked about causes of stress, and someone asked, "What about overthinking?" I asked for a bit more clarity, but nothing come through yet. So whoever that asked, if you're still on the call, please feel free to open up. But just, I guess, overthinking certain situations, certain scenarios, imagining the worst case scenarios potentially.
Yeah, so but again, they're more the effects of being under stress. So it's not necessarily a cause. So the cause would actually be the situation that you're in. So what is the problem that you're thinking about, or what is the situation? That is the actual cause, and that usually comes down to something to do with work or home life. So then you overthink something, which is the mental effect of stress. And what we need to do is think about, well, what can you do differently to think about this? Most people who overthink things or think the worst, one of the best things to do is just take a step back and go, how can I address this one section at a time? So rather than thinking too far forward in the future, what might happen, think about minor steps. Okay, so what can I do to address this next issue? So again, just taking it step by step.
Okay, cool. One more is, when you did the stress scale, you had the minuses to the pluses. A question was asked was, is there any reason, or why do you think we didn't see too many people on the below scale? Obviously, the obvious answer is that, well, we're just in good moods. Or is it generally we still feel some stigma around saying, actually, I'm not in a great place right now?
Yeah, great question. And do you know what? I can't kind of say. It's up to the individuals of what they wanted to put, but I definitely do think that we're still in an element of stigma here. And despite that, not actually naming people on that poll, we may still get people that don't want to say they're in a negative mood. But again, what I would say to people who are in a negative mood, so what? You know, we all experience a negative mood. And if you say you've never experienced a negative mood, I'd really challenge that, because we've all been frustrated. We've all been angry. They're all negative moods that we've been in. But again, how you assess yourself at that time, you know, hopefully I wasn't putting you into a negative mood with this scenario. So most people may have just been thinking currently in their main state, are they in a good mood or a bad mood? So hopefully, yeah,
Okay.
people were in that good mood.
Awesome. One of the ones, you had the symptoms of stress and you had the 4 areas. Someone asked, are those all the inclusive symptoms of stress, or could there be more?
Of course, there's many, many more. I just kind of outlined some of the key ones there that we notice in people or that we experience generally. But yeah, you can find extensive lists of what goes on. Bodily sensations, for example, there's lots of things that go on internally that I didn't list there. But yeah, it's not the exclusive list by any means.
Okay, cool. And one more from Joseph as well. He asked about how to rate the severity of the stress. Now, I just asked for some clarification, so I'm actually going to unmute him. So if Joseph, if you're there, could you share a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, on the green table that where it has the severity out of 100.
Yes.
How would I tell out of 100 that I'm at 90 or at 60 or whatsoever? Because the rating definitely would change how I'm feeling right now about it.
Yes, exactly, and it's a personal thing. So it's how you feel yourself. So there's no particular way to say this is how you rate it if something is this or this. It's purely an individual response. So how do you actually feel? How is it affecting you personally? And only you can put it on that scale. And the importance of that is you start to realize that some of those problems that you had that you might have rated 90 or even 100, on the grand scheme of things, they're probably not that bad. So over time, we realized that, you know what, that shouldn't have been a 90. That should have been a 50. It's not that much of a stress causer for me. So it's more important for people to give their own individual ratings about how they personally feel. There's no strict guidelines on that. Yeah.
It's very subjective, because what a 10 for me could be a 20 for you, and vice versa. I think there's one more just come in, Ben. As a result of stress, there may be times when we're not able to be self-aware and be more reactive. How can we handle or overcome this better? That's from Azar.
Thanks, Azar. Again, it's practice. So only if you put into place some of these tools that I've discussed, and again, this is just a very brief overview of these. So if you want more information, we're more than happy to kind of discuss what we can do differently. But take on board this element of when you find yourself in that situation, stop, rate yourself on a mood scale, on a stress scale, and getting into that kind of mindset of going, right, I need to stop. Because if we just instantly react, it's more often than not that we're going to take the wrong action. So it's just trying to get ourselves into that mindset of, let me implement this tool that I've been given, rather than just trying to get through life as normal and just fighting it and being reactive. If you don't use the tools, you're going to keep being reactive. So use them, let it kind of break that cycle of stress, address it, understand it, and then start to move forward, and then you're more likely to kind of take a better reactive approach to that.
Okay. And that's it. So Ben, we'll wrap it up. I've had a couple of people ask for the content. So we do edit these and take out anything that's kind of potentially personal, and they do go on a YouTube channel, so you can access that anytime as well. So the link, that all going well, that should be ready by Thursday. Please feel free to find us on YouTube. I put our channel link in this chat, and you'll be able to, look, if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get updates, because we're going to be doing these quite often. So if you can't attend the session, you'll always be able to access it there. Ben, over to you to wrap up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to leave you with this last quote. It's always something that I like. So from Thomas Edison: when you have exhausted all possibilities, remember this: you haven't. Okay, so just remember there's always something else that can be done. So being stressed is not the end of it. We can increase our ability to manage stress just by using the tools. Remember, there's always something different that you can do. So with that, thank you very much. I apologize for going over time. And yeah, I hope you have a great day, and those positive moods that people were in, stay positive, and those negative moods, remember, take small steps. How can you increase that and move that into the positive? Thank you very much for your time today, and yeah, be safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye. And once again, just finally, if you think there's any value in this for anyone else or your teams, it's something that we do offer as bigger sessions as well.
Thank you, dear.
Please feel free to give us a shout, but we'll be in touch with information and handouts for you. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.